The air in the ballroom is thick with the scent of money and lilies. It's a suffocating perfume, clinging to the velvet drapes and the crystal chandeliers that hang like frozen tears from the ceiling. I'm standing near a marble pillar, the cold stones seeping through the thin silk of my dress, a glass of champagne sweating in my hand. Across the room, under the golden glow of a spotlight meant for a silent auction piece, she's laughing. Her name is Tiffany, and she's laughing with my husband. My breath catches, a sharp, jagged thing in my throat. It's not their closeness that steals the air from my lungs, not the proprietary way her hand rests on his arm. I've known about them for months. I've lived with the ghost of her perfume on his collars and the echo of her name in his late-night texts. No, it's not that. It's the glint of light from her hand. As she gestures, a flash of familiar fire, a deep, pigeon blood ruby surrounded by a halo of tiny, old mine-cut diamonds catches my eye. The world tilts on its axis. My champagne glass trembles, the liquid inside sloshing against the crystal. It's my grandmother's ring. The ring I thought was stolen 6 months ago. The ring I wept over for weeks, mourning the loss of the last tangible piece of a woman who is more of a mother to me than my own. And it's on her finger. A trophy. A taunt. A final, glittering nail in the coffin of my marriage. Mark catches my eye from across the room. He doesn't smile. He doesn't even have the decency to look guilty. He just gives a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, yes, I did this. And what are you going to do about it? The world just stops. The music fades into a dull roar. The chatter of the crowd becomes a meaningless buzz. If you've ever felt that sickening lurch in your stomach, that moment where everything you thought was true crumbles into dust right before your eyes, tell me in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me bring these stories to life. Before all this, my life was tidy. That's the best word for it. Mark and I had a tidy house in a tidy suburb with a tidy lawn that was mowed every Thursday. We had tidy careers. He was a rising star in finance. I was a graphic designer with a stable roster of clients. We had a tidy love story. We met in college, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions and shared pizzas that blossomed into a comfortable, predictable partnership. Our love wasn't a raging bonfire. It was a pilot light, a small, steady flame that I believed would burn forever. We were a team. Or so I thought. We had plans. A 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. Children were on the horizon, a hazy, sun-drenched dream we'd talk about on lazy Sunday mornings. Life with Mark was a carefully constructed narrative, and I was its happy, unsuspecting protagonist. The ring was the heart of that narrative, the link to my past and the promise of my future. My grandmother, Eleanor, was anything but tidy. She was a force of nature. She smelled of rain and rosewater, and her laugh was a loud, booming thing that could shake a room. She gave me the ring on my 18th birthday. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis but still impossibly gentle, had trembled as she slid it onto my finger. "This ring," she'd said, her voice raspy with emotion, "saw your grandfather through a war. It saw me through raising your mother. It's not just a piece of jewelry, Clara. It's a promise. A promise that love endures, that strength is passed down, that you are never, ever alone." I wore it every single day. It was a part of me, a warm weight on my finger that grounded me. When she passed away 2 years later, the ring became my most precious possession, a vessel for all my memories of her. 6 months ago, our tidy little world was briefly, violently disrupted. We came home from a weekend away to find the back door splintered, the frame hanging off its hinges. The house was a wreck. Drawers were pulled out, their contents strewn across the floor. Cushions were ripped from the sofa. My jewelry box, the one my grandfather had carved for my grandmother, lay empty on the dresser, its velvet lining torn. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. But I only had eyes for one thing: the small, velvet indentation where the ring was supposed to be. It was gone. The police came. They took statements, dusted for prints, and offered sympathetic but ultimately useless words. "These things happen," the officer said, his voice tired. Probably kids looking for quick cash. Mark was the perfect, supportive husband. He held me while I cried, his arms a supposed fortress against the violation I felt. He called the insurance company, filed the report, and talked about upgrading our security system. "It's just a thing, honey," he'd murmured into my hair. "We can replace things. I'm just glad you're safe." I remember looking at him then, his face a mask of concern, and feeling a surge of gratitude. I thought, this is what a partnership is. Facing the ugly things together. I didn't know the ugliness was standing right there, holding me. The insurance company eventually sent a check. It felt like blood money. I put it in a separate account, unable to spend it. How could I replace something that was irreplaceable? The ache of the loss was constant, a dull throb in my chest. My finger felt naked, cold. I felt unmoored, disconnected from my own history. The inciting incident, the first real crack in the facade of my tidy life, came about a month later. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a shocking discovery. It was something small, almost insignificant. It was a Tuesday night. Mark was late, as he often was. "Big project at work," he texted earlier. "Don't wait up," I was used to it. His ambition was one of the things I'd once admired about him. I was tidying up his home office, a space I rarely entered, when I saw it. A receipt from a restaurant I'd never heard of, tucked into the pocket of a jacket he'd worn the previous week. It was from a place called La Fleur Sauvage, a notoriously expensive and romantic French bistro downtown. The date on the receipt was from a night he'd told me he was working late, pulling an all-nighter with his team to meet a deadline. The total was staggering. Over $400. 2 entrees, a bottle of vintage champagne, 2 desserts. It wasn't a work dinner. It was a date. My blood ran cold. I stood there in the silent office, the piece of paper trembling in my hand, and the world began to feel a little less tidy. Denial is a powerful anesthetic. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was entertaining a client. Maybe it was a team celebration. But my gut, that deep, primal instinct we so often ignore, was screaming at me. I put the receipt back in his pocket and said nothing. But a seed of suspicion had been planted. And once it's there, it grows, its roots wrapping around your heart, squeezing until you can't breathe. The early struggles were a quiet, lonely war fought inside my own head. I became a detective in my own home, a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. I'd watch him text, his phone angled away from me, a small, secretive smile playing on his lips. I'd hear him take calls in another room, his voice dropping to a low murmur when I walked by. He started guarding his phone like it was a state secret. He changed his password. When I asked him about it, he just laughed. "New security protocol from work, babe. You know how it is, every excuse was plausible. Every explanation was smooth." He was a master of plausible deniability. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. He'd come home late, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, and I'd ask where he'd been. "I told you, a client dinner," he'd say, his eyes wide with manufactured innocence. "Clara, you're getting so paranoid lately. Is everything okay?" He turned my fear back on me, weaponizing it. He made my intuition feel like an illness. He'd sigh with exaggerated patience when I questioned him, running a hand through his hair as if burdened by my irrationality. "We've been together for 10 years. Don't you trust me?" He made me the villain. I was the suspicious wife, the one creating drama, the one threatening our tidy, happy life. He was just the hard-working husband trying his best. The gaslighting was insidious, a slow-acting poison. I started to doubt my own perceptions. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just stressed. I tried to push the thoughts away, to believe in the man I married, the life we had built. I suggested we go to therapy. To reconnect, I'd said, trying to keep my voice light. He scoffed. "Therapy? We don't need therapy. We're fine. You're the one who seems to think there's a problem." He made it my problem, my failing. I suggested a vacation, just the two of us, somewhere we could turn off our phones and just be together. I can't get away from work right now, honey. You know how important this project is. Everything I suggested to fix the growing chasm between us was dismissed. He was building a wall, brick by brick, and I was on the outside, frantically scratching at the mortar. The loneliness of that period was profound. I was grieving a marriage that everyone, including my husband, insisted was perfectly healthy. I was trapped in a house that no longer felt like a home, with a man who was becoming a stranger. The challenges kept rising, each one a wave trying to pull me under. My quiet investigation became more desperate. I waited until he was in the shower one morning and managed to get into his laptop. His password was still the same as always. It was a small oversight on his part, a crack in his otherwise perfect armor of deceit. I found the emails. They were in a folder labeled Project Nightingale, an innocuous name, but the contents were anything but. There were dozens of them, stretching back months. Emails to a woman named Tiffany, a colleague from his office. They were filled with inside jokes, flirtatious banter, and plans for secret meetings. Can't wait to see you tonight, one read. I've booked our usual spot at La Fleur Savage. The name of the restaurant from the receipt leaped off the screen, a confirmation that burned my eyes. Another one said, "Last night was incredible. You make me feel alive again." My hands shook so badly, I could barely control the mouse. I scrolled back, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The email started 8 months ago. 8 months. He had been lying to me for almost a year. Then I found something that made the bile rise in my throat. An email from Tiffany to Mark, dated 2 weeks after the break-in. "You are the most generous man I have ever known," it read. "I can't believe you gave this to me. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I'll cherish it forever." There was an attachment. A photo. I clicked on it. The image loaded slowly, tortuously. And there it was. My grandmother's ring, sparkling on Tiffany's perfectly manicured hand, her fingers intertwined with Mark's. The world went white. The air rushed out of my lungs in a ragged gasp. He hadn't just cheated on me. He hadn't just lied to me. He had orchestrated a theft. He had stolen a piece of my soul, a piece of my family's history, and given it to his mistress as a trinket, a symbol of their sordid affair. The supportive husband, who held me while I cried over my stolen ring, was a monster. The violation I had felt after the break-in was nothing compared to this. This was a desecration. He hadn't just broken into our house. He had broken into my life, my heart, my memories, and ransacked them all for his own selfish pleasure. I closed the laptop, my movements stiff and robotic. I walked to the bathroom and threw up. There was no more doubt, no more denial. There was only a cold, hard certainty. My marriage was over, and my husband was a thief. My first instinct was to scream, to smash every plate in the kitchen, to throw his expensive suits out onto the lawn, to confront him with the venom and fury that was coiling in my gut. But a strange, icy calm washed over me. A screaming match would give him power. He would twist it, turn me into the hysterical, out-of-control wife. He would play the victim. He had been playing a long game, and I realized I had to play one too. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was about justice. It was about reclaiming what he had stolen from me, not just the ring, but my dignity. That's when I called my Aunt Carol. She was my grandmother's younger sister, and she was cut from the same cloth. Sharp, witty, and with a backbone of pure steel. She lived 3 states away, but when I called her, my voice cracking as I whispered, "Can I come see you?" "Something's happened." She didn't hesitate. "I'll book you a flight. Be here tomorrow." I packed a small bag, my movements numb. Mark was already gone for the day. I left a note on the counter. Gone to visit my aunt for a few days. Feeling overwhelmed, it was vague enough to be true. The flight was a blur. I stared out the window at the clouds, feeling as detached and empty as the vast blue sky. When Carol picked me up from the airport, she took one look at my face and didn't say a word. She just wrapped me in a hug that smelled of lavender and strength, and I finally allowed myself to break. I cried in her arms, great, heaving sobs that felt like they were being torn from my soul. We sat in her cozy, sun-filled kitchen, a pot of tea steaming between us. And I told her everything. The late nights, the secret calls, the gaslighting. I told her about the receipt, the emails, the folder named Project Nightingale, and then, my voice dropping to a whisper, I told her about the ring. He gave it to her, Carol. He staged a break-in and gave my grandmother's ring to his mistress. Carol's face, usually so full of warmth and humor, hardened into something I'd never seen before. It was a cold, quiet fury. She listened without interrupting, her gaze sharp and focused. When I was done, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her hand was warm, her grip firm. "That despicable, low-life son of a bitch," she said, her voice dangerously soft. "He didn't just steal a ring, Clara. He stole your grandmother's legacy. He tried to erase her memory and replace it with his filth." She stood up and began to pace the kitchen, her mind already working. "A police report," she muttered. "You filed a police report?" I nodded. "And an insurance claim?" I nodded again. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "Oh, this is good," she said, a glint in her eye. "This is very, very good. He thinks he's smart. He thinks he's gotten away with it. But men like that, they're arrogant. They make mistakes. And his mistake was thinking that ring was just a piece of jewelry. He has no idea what it really is." That conversation was the midpoint shift, the moment the story stopped being about what Mark had done to me and started being about what we were going to do to him. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone. I had an ally, a formidable one. Hope, a feeling I thought had died, began to flicker back to life. Carol was right. Mark had underestimated the ring, and he had underestimated the women who cherished it. We weren't going to let him get away with it. We were going to get the ring back. And we were going to make him pay for everything. Our strategy sessions took place over several days at Carol's kitchen table. We drank endless cups of tea and ate cookies, but our work was deadly serious. We were building a case. I forwarded her all the emails I had found. She had me call the insurance company and get a copy of the claim I had filed, complete with the detailed appraisal of the ring. The appraisal was a godsend. It had been done years ago when my grandmother had first insured it. It included high-resolution photographs from every angle and, most importantly, a detailed description of its unique characteristics, the specific carat weight of the ruby, the number of diamonds, the cut, the clarity, and a note about a tiny, almost invisible flaw in the ruby that could only be seen under a loupe. And then there was the inscription. Inside the band, my grandfather had inscribed E.G. to E. M. forever. 1946 my grandmother's initials to his, the year they were married. "This is our smoking gun," Carol said, tapping the document with her finger. "This is irrefutable proof. A photograph is one thing, but a legal document like this? Unbeatable." She also had me contact the police department that handled the break-in and get the case number for the report. Every piece of paper was another nail for Mark's coffin. While I was gathering the evidence, Carol was doing her own research. She was a master of the internet, a digital sleuth in a floral apron. She found Tiffany's social media profiles. They were public. Of course they were. Tiffany was the kind of woman who lived her life for an audience. Her pages were a curated highlight reel of expensive dinners, exotic vacations, and designer clothes. And there, in dozens of photos, was my grandmother's ring. On her finger at a rooftop bar. On her finger as she held a glass of champagne on a yacht. On her finger as she posed with Mark, his arm wrapped around her, both of them beaming at the camera. Each photo was a fresh stab to the heart, but it was also more evidence. We saved every single one. While I was away, hiding out at Carol's, my life back home was entering a deeper crisis. Mark's texts went from concerned, "Where are you? I'm worried," to annoyed, "Clara, this is childish. Call me," to outright hostile, "Fine. Stay there. See if I care." He was trying to control the narrative again, painting me as the unstable wife who had abandoned her marriage. A week into my stay with Carol, I received an email. It wasn't from Mark. It was from his lawyer. It was a formal notification of his intent to file for divorce. My stomach dropped. The email was cold, clinical. It cited irreconcilable differences. It also contained a preliminary proposal for the division of assets. He was being generous, it claimed. He would let me keep the house, but I would have to buy out his half of the equity. He would keep his investment portfolio, his pension, and the contents of our joint savings account, which, he claimed, was mostly his money anyway.
He was trying to bleed me dry.
He was systematically dismantling our shared life and trying to leave me with nothing. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. He was always one step ahead. While I was reeling from his betrayal, he was already consulting lawyers, protecting his assets, and preparing to discard me like a piece of trash. I felt powerless, small. It seemed like all was lost. I had lost my husband, my home was in jeopardy, and now he was coming for my financial security. I called Carol, my voice shaking. He's divorcing me. He's trying to take everything. Carol's voice was calm, steady. Let him, she said. Let him think he's in control. Let him think he's winning. The bigger his ego gets, the harder he'll fall. We have something he doesn't know about, Clara. We have the truth. And we have a plan. Her words were a lifeline. She was right. He was playing checkers, moving his pieces around the board, thinking he was a king. We were playing chess. And we were just waiting for the right moment to say, checkmate. The turning point, the moment our quiet planning solidified into a concrete, high-stakes gambit, came from Carol's online sleuthing. She was scrolling through the website for Mark's company, a massive investment firm called Blackwood Capital. And there it was, on their homepage, a banner advertising their biggest event of the year, the annual Blackwood Foundation Charity Gala. It was a massive affair, the highlight of the city's social calendar. The CEO would be there. All the partners would be there. Their biggest clients would be there. It was a night for the firm to pat itself on the back for its philanthropy while swimming in champagne and networking. The date was 2 weeks away. He'll be there, Carol said, her eyes gleaming. And you can bet your life he'll bring her. It was the perfect stage. A room full of the most important people in his professional life. A room where image was everything. To be exposed there wouldn't just be a personal humiliation. It would be a professional catastrophe. The plan began to form, a daring, audacious piece of theater. We weren't just going to confront him. We were going to put him on trial in the court of public opinion, with his entire career on the line. You can't go in there looking like a victim, Carol declared. You have to go in there looking like a queen. We need a dress. We need hair, makeup. We need to build you some armor. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. It was transformative. Carol took me shopping. We didn't buy a sad, black revenge dress. We bought a gown in a deep, emerald green, a color of rebirth and resilience. It was elegant, powerful. We found shoes that made me feel tall, a small clutch that was just big enough for my phone, and a copy of the ring's appraisal. We booked appointments for hair and makeup. With each step, I felt a piece of the old, broken Clara falling away, replaced by someone stronger, someone colder. The night of the gala, as I stood in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me was not the weeping, heartbroken wife who had fled her home weeks ago. Her eyes were clear, her posture was straight. She looked like a woman who knew her worth. Carol stood behind me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Remember who you are, Clara, she said softly. You are Eleanor's granddaughter. There is steel in your veins. Don't forget it. We drove to the hotel, where the gala was being held. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs, but my hands were steady on the steering wheel. We had rehearsed our lines, planned for every contingency. We knew exactly what we were going to do. This brings us back to the ballroom, to the cloying scent of lilies and the weight of 100 pairs of eyes. Carol and I enter, and we don't hide in the corner. We walk straight into the heart of the room. We get drinks. We make small talk with a few people I recognize from Mark's company events in the past.
Ismila, Ilaf.
I play the part of a confident woman enjoying a night out. Out of the corner of my eye, I see him.
Mark.
He's standing with a group of men, all of them in identical black tuxedos. And next to him, clinging to his arm, is Tiffany. She's wearing a shimmering, silver dress that's cut down to her navel. She looks cheap and triumphant. And on her finger, under the brilliant light of the chandeliers, the ruby glows like a drop of blood. Mark sees me. His smile falters for a fraction of a second. A flicker of surprise, maybe even fear, crosses his face before he schools it back into a mask of indifference. He was not expecting me to be here. He thought I was 3 states away, crying into my aunt's tea. He thinks I'm here to make a scene, to cause a messy, emotional confrontation. He's underestimating me again. We wait. We are patient predators. We watch as they work the room. They stop to talk to a distinguished, silver-haired man. I recognize him from photos. It's Mr. Blackwood, the firm's CEO.
Perfect.
The audience is set. Carol gives me a small nod. It's time. We begin to walk towards them, our steps measured and deliberate. The room feels like it's holding its breath. As we approach, Mark's back tenses. He sees us coming. He tries to steer Tiffany away, but it's too late. We are upon them. Carol, a brilliant actress, puts on a dazzling smile. "Mark, darling," she says, her voice bright and cheerful. "So good to see you. And you must be Tiffany. I've heard so much about you." Tiffany looks flustered, surprised by the friendly approach. Mark looks like he's swallowed a stone. "And Carol," he says, his voice tight. "What a surprise." "Oh, we wouldn't miss this for the world," Carol says, her eyes twinkling. She then turns her full attention to Tiffany, her gaze dropping to her hand. "My goodness," she exclaims, her voice full of admiration. "What a breathtaking ring." "It's absolutely stunning," Tiffany preens, basking in the compliment. This is the moment she's been waiting for, to show off the spoils of her conquest. "Oh, thank you," she gushes, holding her hand out for inspection. "It was a gift. From Mark. It's a family heirloom, apparently." She glances up at Mark with a sickeningly sweet smile. Carol leans in, as if to get a closer look. Mr. Blackwood and the others are watching, amused by this little domestic scene. "A family heirloom? How fascinating," Carol says, her voice still light and pleasant. Then, she delivers the line we had rehearsed 100 times. Her voice drops just enough to be heard by everyone in their small circle, a blade wrapped in silk. "Because that's my sister's ring. Eleanor's ring. It was stolen from my niece's home 6 months ago. We have a police report and everything." Silence. A thick, heavy silence descends upon our little group. The air crackles with tension. Tiffany's smile freezes, then evaporates. Her face goes pale, a sickly, chalky white. She gasps, a tiny, strangled sound. She looks down at the ring on her finger as if it's suddenly a venomous spider. She looks at Mark, her eyes wide with panic and confusion. Mark's face is a mask of horror. The color has drained from it, leaving him looking gray and gaunt under the ballroom lights. Mr. Blackwood's eyebrows shoot up into his hairline. His friendly demeanor vanishes, replaced by a sharp, calculating stare. He looks from the ring, to Tiffany, to Mark. This is the climax, the moment the world shatters. But the plot twist, the part that blindsides them completely, is yet to come. Tiffany is the first to speak, her voice a high-pitched, desperate squeak.
"What? No."
"That's not true. Mark, tell her." She turns to him, pleading. Mark, cornered and panicking, tries to bluff his way out. He forces a laugh, a hollow, unconvincing sound. "Carol, you must be mistaken," he says, his voice strained. This is from my side of the family. My grandmother's ring. It looks similar, I suppose." He thinks it's his word against ours. He thinks he can lie his way out of it. He doesn't know we came prepared. Carol doesn't even look at him. She keeps her eyes fixed on Tiffany, her expression one of calm, lethal certainty. "Really?" she says, her voice dangerously sweet. "His grandmother's? Then you won't mind if we look at the inscription, will you? An heirloom like that, it must have 1 inch." Tiffany looks like a deer in the headlights. She doesn't know what to do. Her eyes dart back and forth between Mark and Carol. "There's no need for that," Mark snaps, his composure finally cracking. He tries to take Tiffany's arm, to pull her away. But Mr. Blackwood puts a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. "Let's just clear this up, shall we?" the CEO says, his voice low and commanding. His eyes are like chips of ice. He is no longer an amused spectator. This is happening at his event, involving one of his senior employees. It is now his business. Carol doesn't wait for permission. She pulls her phone from her clutch. With a few taps, she brings up a photo. It's a crystal-clear, high-resolution image from the insurance appraisal. She holds it up for everyone to see. "This is the ring," she says, her voice ringing with authority. "And this," she taps another icon, bringing up the scanned appraisal document, "is the legal description. It mentions a small, crescent-shaped inclusion in the ruby, visible only at 10 times magnification. And an inscription." She zooms in on the text. It reads, "E. G to E. M forever. 1946 foot my mother's initials, to my father's. The year they were married." She looks directly at Mark, her eyes boring into him. "Tell me, Mark, what were your grandmother's initials?" He says nothing. He can't. He is trapped, exposed, humiliated in front of the one man who holds his entire career in his hands. Tiffany lets out a sob. She rips the ring off her finger as if it's burning her skin and shoves it at Mark. "You told me it was yours. You told me it was for me," she hisses, her voice a venomous whisper. The illusion is shattered. The fairy tale romance is revealed for what it is, a cheap lie built on a foundation of theft. Mr. Blackwood looks at Mark with utter contempt. "Mark," he says, his voice like the crack of a whip. "My office. Monday morning. With your lawyer." He then turns to me, his expression softening slightly. "Mrs. Evans," he says, his voice respectful. "I am so sorry that this has happened at our event. Please, allow my security to assist you with recovering your property." He signals to a man in a suit standing by the door. The carefully constructed world Mark had built, his career, his reputation, his affair, all of it comes crashing down in a single, spectacular moment of public disgrace. He hadn't just been caught cheating. He'd been exposed as a thief, a liar, and an insurance fraudster, all in front of his boss. He didn't just lose his mistress. He lost everything. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Security escorted a weeping Tiffany out one door and a shell-shocked Mark out another. Aunt Carol and I were led to a quiet office where we gave a statement to a police officer who had been working security at the event. I handed him the police report number from the original break-in and the copy of the appraisal. The officer took the ring, now sealed in an evidence bag, and assured me it would be returned as soon as the formalities were complete. Walking out of that ballroom, leaving the whispers and the stunned faces behind, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt quiet. The roaring storm inside me had finally passed, leaving behind a strange and profound stillness. The fight was over. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. Mark was fired from Blackwood Capital, his disgrace absolute. The firm couldn't distance itself from him fast enough. He was charged with theft and insurance fraud. Faced with the mountain of evidence, the emails, Tiffany's testimony, the appraisal, the police report, he had no choice but to plead guilty. He received a suspended sentence and a hefty fine, but his career in finance was over. He was ruined. Tiffany disappeared. I heard through the grapevine that she'd quit her job and moved out of the city, unable to face the humiliation. Our divorce was uncontested. He didn't fight me on anything. He signed the papers, giving me the house, a significant portion of his remaining assets, and my freedom. He knew he had no leverage, no ground to stand on. The last time I saw him was across a lawyer's conference table. He looked like a ghost. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed exhaustion. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He was a stranger, a man I had once loved, now reduced to a cautionary tale. A few weeks later, a package arrived. It was from the police department. Inside, nestled in a small box, was my grandmother's ring. I lifted it out, the metal cool against my skin. It looked different now. It was still beautiful, but it carried the weight of a new story. A story of betrayal, but also a story of survival. I slid it onto my finger. It felt right. It felt like coming home. The cold, naked feeling I'd lived with for months was gone, replaced by a familiar warmth. It wasn't just a ring anymore. It was a symbol of my own strength, of the steel in my veins that I had inherited from my grandmother and my aunt. It was a reminder that I had faced the ugliest parts of my life, and I had not only survived, but I had won. Not through screaming or revenge, but through intelligence, patience, and the unbreakable bond of family. My life isn't tidy anymore. It's messy and complicated and uncertain. But it's mine. I sold the house, the one with the tidy lawn and the ghost of a broken marriage in its walls. I moved into a small apartment in the city, a place with big windows and a view of the skyline. I'm focusing on my work, on my friendships, on rebuilding a life that is authentically my own. Some days are hard. The phantom limb of a decade-long partnership still aches sometimes. But then I'll catch a glimpse of the ruby on my finger, a flash of deep, resilient red. And I remember. I remember the woman who gave it to me and the woman who helped me get it back. And I remember the woman I became in the process. That ring isn't just gold and stone. It's a story of survival. It's my story now. Thanks for being here with me. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.